It was supposed to be the perfect neighborhood. Manicured lawns, shiny driveways, and homes lined up like postcards. But beneath the calm surface, one decision shattered everything. A black homeowner's simple request for fairness turned into a nightmare of control, punishment, and devastation. The HOA thought they could silence him by destroying the very land he lived on. But what they did next didn't just ruin his life. It backfired in ways they never expected. How far would they go to keep him in line? And how far would he go to fight back? Marcus Johnson had worked his whole life for this home. Tucked at the edge of a quiet suburban development, his property held something no one else had, a small creek winding through his backyard. To Marcus, it was more than water. It was peace. A place where his children played, where birds gathered, where he could breathe after years of hard work. But in neighborhoods like this, peace always came with a price. The Homeowners Association, the so-called guardians of order, had their eyes on Marcus from the start. They didn't like the way he kept his backyard natural. They didn't like the people who came to visit him. And though they never said it aloud, Marcus knew why the rules seemed to bend differently for him than for his white neighbors. At first, it was small. Notices about his lawn being too wild. Letters questioning the structure of his deck. Whispers in meetings that Marcus didn't fit the image. He brushed them off, determined to enjoy the life he had built. But the HOA was watching, and when Marcus refused to bend, they decided to break him. What began as paperwork and warnings would soon transform into an act so destructive, it would drown not just Marcus's peace, but the entire community's. It started with a meeting. Marcus was told his creek, the one that had existed for decades, was now a problem. According to the HOA, it was messy, a breeding ground for mosquitoes, and unsightly compared to the pristine uniformity they demanded. Marcus knew the truth. This wasn't about cleanliness. It was about control, and more specifically about him. He pushed back, reminding them that the creek wasn't man-made. It was part of the land, part of nature itself. But the HOA didn't care. They filed complaints, citing environmental hazards. They called in inspectors who seemed far too eager to agree. And then, without Marcus's consent, without warning, they acted. One morning, Marcus walked outside to find trucks rumbling down his street. Cement mixers, construction crews, and men in bright vests moved with quiet efficiency. Before he could stop them, before he could even process it, the creek was gone. Filled, buried under thick, gray concrete. It was more than vandalism, it was erasure. The sound of rushing water replaced by silence. His children's laughter silenced. His sanctuary destroyed. Marcus felt rage burn inside him, but the HOA dismissed his protests. "We improved your property," they told him coldly. "You should be grateful." But the earth has a way of fighting back. Weeks later, the rains came. The natural flow of the creek, once guided safely by its channel, had nowhere to go. Water pooled in yards. Lawns became soggy. Basements began to flood. The HOA homes, once perfect and pristine, now sat in shallow swamps. Neighbors who once looked down on Marcus now found themselves ankle-deep in water. Their driveways cracked. Their gardens rotted. Yet still, the HOA refused to admit fault. Instead, they pointed fingers at Marcus, claiming he was to blame for not maintaining his property. The injustice cut deep. He had lost his peace, his land, and now he was being framed as the cause of the community's misery. But Marcus wasn't broken. If the HOA thought he would quietly drown in their concrete, they were wrong. He was about to fight back, and this time, the truth would rise higher than the floodwaters. The rains turned heavier. What began as puddles transformed into small lakes. The entire neighborhood groaned under the weight of water they couldn't escape. Driveways caved in. Mold crept into walls. The perfect image of the HOA's kingdom collapsed in real time. And while his neighbors panicked, Marcus prepared. He gathered photos of the creek before the destruction. He collected documents showing the trucks, the permits, and the signatures authorizing the concrete pour. He contacted environmental lawyers, stormwater experts, and journalists eager to expose what had happened. The HOA tried to silence him. Letters, threats, even fines stacked against him. But Marcus no longer cared about their intimidation. He had proof, and proof was power. When the lawsuit hit, it sent shockwaves through the community. Marcus wasn't just fighting for his creek. He was exposing an entire system of racial targeting, environmental abuse, and corruption hiding behind neighborhood rules. In court, the evidence was undeniable. Experts testified that filling the creek had disrupted natural drainage, creating the swamp-like floods. Neighbors who once turned away were now forced to admit the truth. Marcus had been right all along. And when the HOA president took the stand, smug and defiant, Marcus felt the years of frustration finally flip. For once, the power wasn't in their hands. It was in his. The ruling came down hard. The HOA was found liable. Their actions ruled reckless and discriminatory. Fines piled into the hundreds of thousands. And in one final order, the judge demanded what Marcus thought he'd never hear again. The creek would be restored. The sound of water returned. Slowly, painfully, crews ripped up the concrete, restoring the creek to its natural state. It would take years to heal the scars. But Marcus stood in his yard one morning and listened. The gentle trickle of water, alive once more. It was more than a victory. It was survival. For the HOA, their kingdom had crumbled. Members resigned in disgrace. Homes lost value. The image they had fought so hard to preserve was destroyed by their own arrogance. What they had tried to erase, the voice of a black homeowner demanding respect, had become the very thing that defined them in history. Marcus didn't celebrate with loud triumph. He didn't need to. His win wasn't just for himself. It was for every homeowner told they didn't belong, for every family crushed under rules written to keep them out. But the question lingered. How many more battles like his would it take before things truly changed? How many more creeks would be buried? How many more lives disrupted before fairness outweighed control? And as you hear the story, ask yourself, if this can happen in a neighborhood that looks perfect on the outside, what's really happening behind the walls of order in communities everywhere? Because in the end, racism doesn't always wear a badge or shout in the street. Sometimes it hides behind paperwork, meetings, and a smile at the door. If stories like Marcus's matter to you, if you believe these truths should never be buried, make sure you like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories that need to be told. Together, we shine a light on what others try to keep in the dark.